think. Yeah, there we go. And we are live with another episode of the Keeg Talks. Today, the Keeg Talks Star Trek. I'm your host, Dimithri Perera. And if you can see us live, you can see me and you can see our guests. And that means you're watching us on twitch.tv/The Keeg Show or youtube.com/The Keeg Show. Or, maybe you're listening to the podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And in that case, I should probably introduce my guests. First up, he's been on the Keeg multiple times on a lot of Star-related episodes, because he was on the Star Girl episode, and then now on Star Trek again. We got Gil Baron. Gil, how's it going, man?
Oh, I'm doing great. I'm really excited to talk about my very favorite thing in the whole world, Star Trek. I'm searching a fun image. Yeah, people might know me as the Trekspert, the one who enjoys the Star Trek.
You do enjoy Star Trek.
Yeah, I'm just trying to spread that love. I want people to love it as much as I do.
Even when we talk comic books, you're like, hey, what about those Star Trek comics, though?
Guys, right? This Star Trek reboot they did is so good.
We'll get into that. There's so much Star Trek content right now, which I have a question I'm going to pose to both of you. But who's the other guest? We got first timer on the Keeg, Lauren Montez herself. The Rose Explodes. Lauren, welcome.
Hi. I too love Star Trek.
Do you?
So I do. You never would have guessed, but
I mean, your background looks like you would just put a hologram up of anything, really. So who's to say? You do an X-Men episode, you put a hologram of X-Men up.
Yeah, exactly. The holodeck is down right now, though, so we've just got the basic grid.
Yeah, isn't it always? It's like the ice cream machine at McDonald's.
Yeah.
It's never.
It'd be surprising if it was working properly.
Yeah. I'm glad to have you, Lauren. You do Star Trek TikToks.
I do.
How is that?
It's actually so much fun. Trek Talk, as it's called, is a super welcoming place, and it allows you to be super creative and do the things that you love and take trending trends that don't really apply to anything about me, but make them about Star Trek, and suddenly you've got a bunch of friends. So yeah. It's great. I love it.
Did you start off doing TikToks about Star Trek, or did you just start off just generally doing TikToks and then move into your interests?
Let me think back. I haven't I downloaded it during the early pandemic, because had nothing else to do. So I did that. And I think I just tried it out and did a couple of things. And I was like, oh, I can do Star Trek stuff, because I had some stuff on my Instagram and I'm a part of the Star Trek community. So I was like, oh, I'll do that. And so I started doing Trek content and got some followers from that, and realized there was this whole community on TikTok, and just kept doing that. And I do branch out and do other stuff here and there, but it's mostly Star Trek, because any conversation I have or anything I do, usually I end up talking about Star Trek.
Are you that type of person? You and Gil, you just change conversations to Star Trek conversations?
Well, everything is related to Star Trek. Star Trek covers so much, just in regard to society and the way that beings, not only human, but that beings function. So you can relate almost anything to Star Trek, I think.
Yeah,
that's entirely true.
Are we? I guess the general question I want to ask both of you: are we in a Star Trek renaissance right now? Have we been in one? Are we getting one? Has it passed? Where's the Star Trek renaissance?
That's a great question. Wait, no, I have to think about it. Gil, you have to go first.
Oh, sure. Okay, sure. Yeah, I think that we are in the midst. We're maybe in phase 2 of the Star Trek resurgence. Thank God for Paramount Plus bringing, so many shows to the air. But the first wave of it was really throw it all at the wall, see what sticks. Picard season 1 and 2, which a lot of people were like, okay, this is a little bonkers and a little crazy. Or even Discovery, that's just it's just a lot. And as much as I enjoy Discovery, and the more they do, the more refined it kind of gets. So things my personal favorites of the newer Star Trek crop would be, I really love Prodigy, I really love Lower Decks, I really love Strange New Worlds. I love everything they're doing in the comics right now. I think is really great. But I think that we had to go through it's certainly in under an umbrella of Star Trek Renaissance because we're getting so much material, which is wonderful. But I really appreciate the creativity of like, let's go a little nuts here and maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, and they'll adjust things. Like maybe you saw in Strange New Worlds, they've adjusted the design of the Klingons from what they did on Discovery. Now, I was never a hater of that Klingon design. I thought it was kind of interesting. I knew what they were going for, but like, they're like, okay, well, that was us taking a big swing. Now we're gonna like pull it back and do something else. So I do think we are in what I would call phase two of the Renaissance, and I only expect it to get better because we now know that Section 31 is going to be a TV movie or an online, streaming movie, and that just opens the possibilities for more things like that, more comics, games, VR, anything that could be possible.
Yeah.
Well,
As a like Star Trek fan, like I'm at like an 8 out of 10. Like I don't know everything, but like I'm all for.
You're giving yourself a lot of credit there.
Okay, what do you consider yourself? Are you not 10 out of 10, Gil?
I'm 15 out of 10.
Okay.
That was aggressive. I'm so sorry.
No. If you are, then you are. Yeah, be that. Maybe you're an 8 out of 15.
Okay, I'll be an 8 out of 15. That's fair. It's like, what's the threshold, I guess, for it?
I don't know. We've been trying to get you more into Star Trek.
That's my 2.
We know that you're busy.
The
like
2
we know that
is what I'm missing.
Yeah.
Is it 1?
We know that you like Star Trek, but we need to make you a Star Trek fan.
That's fair. Yeah, James from Texas, James from TX out there says I'm 7 out of 9. Out there on Twitch. Thank you, James, for that. Okay, so maybe I'm not, but I would like to, I do.
We
like
want you to be. You're welcome. We were all talking before we started the stream about how Star Trek is just not a gatekeepy community, or like at its best, it's not a gatekeepy community, right? Because it's this really beautiful show that's about positivity and philosophy and optimism, and so it's a big tent. Come on in. It's IDIC, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. So we want new people. We want to show you this thing that we've loved and see what you see in it that's different than what I, a 30+ year fan, think about it, right?
I completely agree. And going back to what you were saying about the Renaissance and bringing people in and welcoming people, I think a huge part of what's going on now is having something for literally everyone. You've got, unfortunately Prodigy was canceled. However, that was for kids, and then we've got people who love the original series. We've got Strange New Worlds, and then we have Discovery for people who like the more cinematic, broader scale things. So I think right now in this you put it perfectly, the second phase of this Renaissance, we've got something for everyone, which is fantastic because there's going to be new people and younger fans coming in, so they get to grow up with Star Trek the same way that a lot of us did. I think it's so cool. That's another reason why I love Star Trek.
So Star Trek Prodigy, because again, there's a lot of Star Trek out right now. Star Trek Prodigy being the more younger oriented cartoon show, just got canceled, right? Mm-hmm. With no hope of return. Are we not thinking they're
there's a campaign?
Yeah, and I don't think nowadays anything is canceled definitively. Right. There's always a chance that things will come back on another platform. So I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, there's always something. It definitely, I know there was kind of a run on the physical media, and I'm in the same boat. I want to have it just because I don't know. This is a broader conversation about the streaming world and the current state of Hollywood, but get that physical media, guys, and make sure you're tweeting or threading your hashtag Save Prodigy. Because that's literally
we're all on Threads now, baby.
We're on Threads, baby. But look, there's such a great history of this with Star Trek. Star Trek was like one of the first big fan campaigns to make sure that the original series stayed on the air, right? The original series only had 3 seasons, and after season 1, they were getting ready to cancel it. And there was a huge, huge write-in campaign to keep it going.
The power of fandoms, man.
Yeah, and Star Trek is one of those incredible ones that they step up, they jump in, and the take I've had on Star Trek Prodigy forever is like, let the kids have their Star Trek. Kids should have a good Star Trek. And there was a take. This is not my original thought. Someone else had this, but they described Prodigy as kids from the Star Wars universe escaping to the Star Trek universe. And like, what a perfect way to describe that show, because it's literally about kids who were under this like Darth Vader like figure, and living in the Empire, and they discover this ship and they learn about what the Federation is. And they're like, no, that sounds better than this crazy constant war thing I was living under.
Yeah.
And the show ended in such a beautiful place, or the season 1 at least really ended in a really beautiful place, and that finale was really great. That whole last arc was so good, and I loved Janeway on it was so good. There were some bumps early on, but it really won me over.
I've been like I've been sad, not because I've watched Prodigy, but I'm sad for the people out there, because somebody said that was their way of showing Star Trek to their kids.
Yeah.
And getting them interested in it. And a lot of these franchises, they're forgetting that you need an entry level, into entry, into these franchises, right? Marvel needs it, Star Wars needs it, Star Trek needs it. If you want to be, a franchise that lasts till the end of time, you have to keep making entry level projects. Right?
I suppose that's true, but I also think, you correct me if I'm wrong in your guys' experiences, but when I was a kid, the idea of like what was the real version of something was very important to me as like a 5 or 6 year old. Yeah, but is this the real one? And I think at that age, you want to watch whatever the grown-ups watch. So Star Wars and Star Trek at that time, they weren't really made for super mature audiences.
Right.
I think that's really what got me into Next Generation in the first place. It was super kid friendly, but it was also like about expanding your mind. And it's not like there were any curse words, but like kids are going to get into whatever their cooler friend or cooler relative has on TV. So I do agree there should always be like something for kids, but like a kid is always going to want to watch whatever the real version is.
I never had a cool friend. Well, I did later on, and now all of my friends are super cool. You guys,
you're just calling out all your friends right now. You're like, I don't have cool friends. All my friends are lame.
I'm the weird one, and I have always been the weird one. But
what was your entry point?
So weirdly, my entry point was kind of through osmosis, because I stayed at my grandmother's a lot. And so my brother and I would sleep on the pull-out couch in the living room, and my grandma would be watching TV, and late into the night, Star Trek would be on. And so I would just fall asleep listening to Next Generation. And I never really watched it because I was falling asleep, but I was absorbing it the whole time. And then later on, when I decided to watch the series, I was like, I know this episode. Like, I've not seen it, but I know it, and I know these voices and these characters and these relationships, and it felt like home to me, which my grandmother's house was my home. So it's like, everything about it felt so comfortable and cozy. And so it just was always kind of in my brain and in my essence, I guess. And then when I finally was able to observe it with my, adult brain and eyes, it just like became even more of a fundamental part of who I am. I'm getting emotional. I miss my grandma. But she was like secretly my entry point to Star Trek. And maybe that's one of the reasons why it's so precious to me and why it means so much. But yeah.
I fully agree with you. That's also one of maybe this isn't the best selling point for like modern nerds about like, oh yeah, go back and watch Next Generation. But it is on some level a white noise machine. Like, it is there to like make you feel comfortable. The pace of the show is very deliberate. The arguments are, there's always a philosophical question, and we're going to hear this argument, and we are going to sometimes leave with more questions than answers. But it's like, it's about, I don't want to say it's about comfort, but there's so much comfort in it,
Well, and it's episodic, so you get resolutions every episode, except for between seasons where they have
the cliffhangers.
Yeah. That's what they are. Thank you.
Yeah. But I just meant questions in terms of philosophically, right? Like sometimes the question of the episode, like do these people have a right to exist in whatever way, right? And the question is like, well, maybe we have questions, maybe there aren't any clean answers. But the world was about welcoming you in, and you can have 1,000 different opinions, but we're gonna sit and we're gonna talk about it. We don't have to hate each other over these things. One of the greatest lines from Picard season 3 was when they get back on the Enterprise D, spoiler alert, and Captain Picard's like, "I missed the carpet." I was like, yeah, we all kind of missed the carpet. The carpet is the Star Trek, right?
Yeah.
Whatever.
I came at Star Trek, and I've mentioned it on previous episodes. I came at Star Trek from a little bit different point of view. When I was a kid, my parents aren't sci-fi people. I've been slowly now as an adult trying to get my parents into science fiction. But my parents were never. So what I watched with them were like old reruns of stuff, but it wasn't old reruns of Star Trek. So like, it's not the oldness that was a factor. It was like the Star Trek part. But I got into Star Wars and I got into other geek related stuff through my friends. But friends my age were not talking about Star Trek. This was about the time of Next Generation. It was in my group of friends, and I think like in Star Wars related geek communities and whatever, it's just like Star Trek's all talk. It's just like talk, and it's just kind of boring. And I'm not saying it's boring now. What I'm saying is, like a kid, I never gave it a shot. I gave it shots as in I roasted it a bunch of times, not knowing what I'm talking about. It was just Star Trek didn't have that entry point for me.
Mm-hmm.
I would have to, take a big leap of faith to start watching Next Generation as a kid. Now, I like Next Generation. That works for me. But what got me into Star Trek is it isn't the first J.J. Abrams movie, but it was knowing that the first J.J. Abrams movie was coming out. When I saw the trailer, then I got into like watching other series, and then I watched the movie, and then I got way more into Star Trek. So
we have to get you into Deep Space Nine.
Yeah. Sorry.
You guys are
so emphatic about that.
Are bullying me and peer pressuring me.
Yeah.
You know what?
Be your bully.
Is that
there are worse things that we could be bullying you about?
That's true. I'll do drugs. Fine.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine is drugs for sure.
Yeah, that's really what the D stands for.
Yeah, Drug Space Nine. Yeah, the way I always describe it to people is Next Generation is Star Trek 101. That's your basis of everything you need to know. And Deep Space Nine is advanced Trek. Yes. So it is like, it's a deconstruction, but it also reconstructs,
DS9 is my favorite series.
Is it?
Hands down, by far. This whole episode will be about it if you don't stop me. So
That's fair.
Yeah, let it be about that. I mean, I appreciate, Lauren, the way you phrase it in opinion terms. You're saying it's my favorite. I think it's okay to objectively say it is the best.
Yes. However, I don't want to come off as I don't want to prevent anyone from liking what they like. But if you like something else, that's okay. I just don't agree with you personally.
But you've seen, you're in these fan communities a lot, right? You see all these people who have finally checked out Deep Space Nine, and they always are so effusive and they're so gushing by the end of it. And how did I not watch this before? This is definitely the best of all the Trek. I didn't know it was going to be like this. Almost every single week, I'm still on Facebook, but in the Facebook groups, you see it almost every day. You see someone be like, all right, I'm finally watching Deep Space Nine, and you guys were right. Like every single day.
Well, and I think, DS9 isn't always comfortable. And I think that's what turns people off of it, because it is more, I don't want to say more complex, but it does dive into more complex relationships, especially when we're talking about relationships between intergalactic species and things like that. And war and the cost of war and diplomatic relationships, which you get some of in the other series as well. And it's well done there too. But the framing in which DS9 does it is so gritty and real, and it's not pretty. And I love the way that they handle it. Poisonally.
You're right. You're objectively correct.
I will give it
Not
a shot.
subjectively.
Is it the type of show that I'm gonna like from the first episode, or are you guys the type of fans to recommend? You're like, look, watch the first 3 seasons, you won't like it, but then after that point, it starts picking up.
So I'm one of those people who I will just start from the beginning if somebody tells me it's good, because I know that a show needs to, grow its beard.
Yeah.
A phrase that came from Star Trek. And eventually, after you've watched it, you kind of forget that the bad, quote unquote, like heavy air quotes, that the bad episodes were in the first few seasons. But then you also start to look back on them with such fondness, and it all just is like, oh yeah, that was actually all really good. I just wasn't like prepared for it. So I always say start from the beginning if you're willing to, but I do have like suggestions of episodes for like specific types of friends that might be interested, just to like get them into it. But you need to just start from the beginning, quite frankly. But you will know that it gets badass when Cisco shaves his head and grows his beard. That's when you're like, all right, we're ready to rock and roll.
So growing the beard works for Cisco too? Like that.
Well, also shaving his head, though, like that, and Cisco's my favorite captain. I love him so much. But yeah, shaved head, goatee, we're ready to go.
Okay.
The war criminal Benjamin Sisko.
Hey, you know what? He did what
He
he had
is.
to do.
He certainly did what he had to do. That's true. And he can live with it. He can live with
And
it.
he understands the cost of what he did.
That's right.
Okay.
I will stand by that man till the day I die.
I have a general question.
Go ahead.
General question, because you guys are recommending Deep Space Nine to me.
And to everyone.
If somebody has not seen anything Star Trek and understanding the weight of this decision, because if you give them the wrong recommendation,
You start with TNG.
you would recommend TNG now in 2023 to someone who has no idea what Star Trek is, and they will give up on Star Trek if they don't like it.
TNG is Star Trek 101, in my personal opinion.
In a class. But what
Are
about
we talking about a series or an episode?
a series?
Okay.
Yeah, if they're going to sit and watch the entire 7, then TNG will give you the basics of all the...
They could give it up. They could give up on it. I have to put that up. This is real life, right?
Well, you said watch the whole series. You said watch the series.
Yeah,
You're
you're
watching the series, you got to watch the whole 7, and that's 26 episodes a season.
No,
That's not...
I feel like I don't know if this works.
That's months of work.
Yeah.
Mm.
At
you guys
this
get what I'm
point,
trying to get
honestly, yeah. At this point, honestly, I would say to start with Strange New Worlds, because it has all the modern things that we are used to and that audiences today expect, and it pays homage to the original series, and it introduces you to the different types of storylines that we have in all of the series. But it's a very comfortable thing for modern audiences to watch. So I would recommend that one for someone just starting out. I also love Strange New Worlds. Yeah,
I completely agree. It's a throwback story style where it has ongoing storylines, but every episode is self-contained. Everyone on there is gorgeous.
Too gorgeous.
They are so attractive.
Everybody.
Why? Look,
there's somebody there for everybody.
Have you heard of television?
I don't know.
In space, everyone's beautiful.
Everyone's beautiful.
In this show specifically, I think it's been increasing over time. I don't think the original series, obviously Uhura, but
humans weren't as attractive in the 60s as they are now. It's just
maybe that's what it is. But
they were. It's just a way of like style and
the
like
guys weren't as attractive, were they? Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
In original series as compared to now.
Paul Newman, like even William Shatner, gorgeous man.
Okay. I believe you. I'm trusting you with this one. For sure.
And for the record, the women were stunning as well. Sometimes their hair was a little weird or the makeup was strange. Like Deanna Troi, her contour too much. But guess what? That was attractive in the 90s. But like she was a beautiful woman.
Yeah.
Very pretty.
I don't know why I'm so like aggressive.
Yeah, what is this conversation we're having?
I don't know.
Everyone's beautiful on Star Trek is what I'm trying to
The Strange New Worlds people are like they're much more like TV attractive. It's a different level.
Well,
But
especially Spock.
Yeah.
when people talk about like the horniness, like Star Trek has always been pretty horny in a lot of ways. But I would call Enterprise like the horniest Trek.
Is it?
It is very specifically in that like early 2000s, like
Yeah.
post 9/11, like we have to see side boob on every single episode. Like they learned all the wrong lessons from Voyager.
Get them in the sonic shower immediately.
Immediately, can we have a gel bath? Poor Jolene Blalock. That woman was a Star Trek fan. Jolene Blalock was a Star Trek
Was
fan when
that
she started.
T'Pol?
Yeah, and she was not when that show ended.
I don't blame her. I mean,
I don't blame her either.
a lot of the women in Star Trek had negative experiences, unfortunately, and thankfully, like Terry Farrell and Jerry Ryan still love the series and appreciate everybody else, but a lot of the women didn't have super fantastic experiences, which is unfortunate. But nowadays there are more fail safes against that.
Thank God.
So.
Yeah.
And we have, it's one of the things I love on Strange New Worlds is it is a majority female crew, which I don't know that we've had yet. And that's the captain who, if you go back to the first pilot, one of the first lines of dialogue that Captain Pike says is, "I don't know if I could get used to a woman on the bridge." And now, like, you see any individual episode, and his entire bridge crew, except for Spock, is all women.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Discovery had a pretty big female cast, right? Like
certainly bigger than like
everybody on the bridge.
Shows, yeah.
I'm trying to remember everybody on the bridge in Discovery.
There were a lot.
Yeah.
But with Discovery, I feel like I didn't really get to know and care for so much of the bridge crew, which is unique for a Star Trek. But I think personally, I feel that Discovery was more about the spectacle. I'm going to be real right now. It really stressed me out. Like, I enjoyed it and I'm glad that it's there, but I had to be in a specific mindset to watch Discovery because the stakes were always so high, and love it if I'm in the mood for it, but it was very intense, and it often focused on the intensity of what was going on as opposed to the characters that were involved in what was going on.
Yeah.
Right.
But
I think that's so valid. That's exactly right. I think I don't know that I have anything to add to that. That's exactly right. It took sort of the vibe of the JJ movies.
yes,
Which everything was, even when you think you're safe, and now the monster's going to come in, right? Oh, good. I just got out of the boiling, whatever chute, and now suddenly something's going to suck me out into space. It was like just constant movement, which was the vibe of those movies.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Discovery really wanted to keep that energy, which is not terrible, but it is its own
yeah,
thing.
some people love that, and I'm glad it's there for them. For me, DS9 is on Paramount Plus.
I like.
I can watch Discovery. I enjoy Discovery. I'm a Deep Space Nine person.
Discovery hinges on whether you like Michael Burnham or not, and I like Michael Burnham.
No, see, I love Michael Burnham.
I love her.
It's just the stress.
Yeah. I don't know if I agree with that, Dimithri, because like we still don't necessarily know her, and I think
she's like the main person in every single episode. It
right.
always revolves around her.
But you've never had an episode like Data's Day on Discovery, right? Do you know Data's Day? Do you know this episode from Next Generation? Where? No, I'm asking Dimithri.
Oh,
I know it.
I'm sure I know you do.
I know it only because Lauren did a TikTok.
Oh, perfect.
I did my top favorite comfort episodes, and
such a comfort episode,
on there
because it is exactly that. It is. There is like an existential threat, but it's not universe ending, right? But it is about what is a normal day in the life of Data, who is our third or fourth lead on the show.
Mm-hmm.
And he's taking care of his cat. He's helping his friends deal with their relationship problems. He's
worried about a wedding gift.
Yeah, worried about a wedding gift. He's dealing with some sci-fi stuff in the background. And like that's what I think Star Trek can be at its best. Is like you can have small slice of life stories that ask you science fiction questions, and that can just be a comfortable episode. And Discovery hasn't figured out how to do that yet.
That being
Guess
said,
what?
oh, sorry.
I would like you to guess, Gil, my comfort DS9 episode.
If Data's Day is like a first like salvo into it,
And this is actually my number one
number
comfort
one,
episode.
can you give me some kind of clue? Like that's maybe thematic or
I don't think I can without giving it away. But
but
keep
it
in
falls
mind,
under
I
that group
love,
of, like just chilling out episodes.
yeah. The stakes are a little higher, but in a fun way.
A fun way. I was gonna say Lower Decks because it has like it's also maybe Rascals where they
Nope.
turn into kids.
Nope.
Maybe the next phase.
No, I'm so surprised you're not guessing it.
Yeah, no, sorry. I mean, there's so many to choose from. They're all so wonderful.
Trials and Tribulations.
Oh, from Deep Space Nine. I thought you were talking about Next Generation. I'm sorry.
No, wait, did I say Next Gen?
Maybe I just misheard.
No.
But yeah, Trials and
I
Tribulations.
was like,
What a
wait a minute,
perfect
are those
episode.
DS9 episodes? I get
No,
yeah,
those were Next Generation episodes. But you're right. Yeah, Trials and Tribulations, one of the greatest episodes
that's my
of all
favorite.
time. Just so fun and so like, hey, we're gonna have a fun adventure, guys. You know,
Yeah, and the stakes are high
the
in
stakes are
that
pretty
one.
high. Mhm.
But it's so comfortable and sweet, and I love it. I
Yeah.
have a dentist. Sorry, tangent, if I may. So my dentist, I get very anxious going to the dentist, and he's a very sweet man. And he has a setup where you can watch anything you want on the TV that's on a streaming service. And so I always watch Trials and Tribulations while I'm getting my teeth cleaned, and it's just it
Oh,
makes
what a terrible thing to relate in your mind.
Right.
You're
No,
like,
no, no.
Wouldn't you equate the two so that if you watch it on its own, you just feel it in your mouth?
clearly it works for Lauren,
No,
but
because Star Trek is so powerful that it supersedes the dentist, and in life I can go back and watch it and it's just Star Trek and good vibes. I don't even think about the dentist, but I am always thankful at the dentist that I can watch it there.
yeah. Yesterday, for the first time, I watched a Deep Space Nine episode from season one, If Wishes Were Horses. So this is the one where Rumpelstiltskin shows up and some other different like fantasy, like just some characters' fantasies start coming to life.
I
And
love
it's
that
exactly that. Like what a silly episode about like, yeah, O'Brien was reading Rumpelstiltskin to his daughter and now he has to deal with Rumpelstiltskin showing up. Like what a silly, wonderful Star Trek-y thing.
Yeah.
I've been loving Strange New Worlds. I think it's a very good
Really good.
entry into this. And like it's one of those things that like you could watch Strange New Worlds and then if people really like it, they can start watching the original series.
Yes.
Yes.
It's like a sequel to it, even though some things aren't gonna mesh.
If that's the thing that really bothers you in this life, that like the lighting is different or the makeup is different, like you have to get over it. You know, we
I
live
feel
in a
like you're
different.
speaking directly to me.
I have to be like,
You and I.
Yeah,
you
get
and I have
over
been-
it, dude.
We've been doing podcasts for a couple years now. I call myself a continuity whore.
sure.
Because,
We have had this conversation, right?
It's not
We
'cause
talk
I'm
about
ripping- I'm
comics.
not ripping things apart, but it's.
I don't think you
to
are.
me, it needs to make sense somehow. I will bend over backwards for it to make sense. I don't need much, but I need something, right?
Well, give an example. What are you talking about?
Oof. So what I really liked about the J.J. Abrams ones is that they mention that it's an alternate timeline. And
Right.
so because it's the
Oh.
Kelvin timeline, I can accept any changes to it. Now, in the recent, and I know that Gil really wanted to talk about the Lawn episode of Tomorrow, they mention a backdoor retcon vehicle in a way that
Okay,
explains
we can talk about this in particular. In Star Trek lore, in the world building of Star Trek,
Yes.
there were in the 1990s, theoretically, or within the history of Star Trek, there were something called the eugenics wars
Yes.
in the 1990s on Earth. And that is what leads into World War III, which eventually leads to us coming to peace with each other and first contact and all of those things, right? Now, clearly, it's the year 2023 now. The eugenics wars didn't happen, or at least or they just didn't happen, right? Because we live in the real world. It just didn't happen. And so this episode, they put in a backdoor way to be like, oh, all of these people playing around with the timeline, people time traveling so much, has pushed back certain events, like the temporal Cold War from Enterprise, and all sorts of stuff has pushed back stuff. So the eugenics wars, Khan is still a child even like 10 years from now. So Khan might be born in like 2023 or 2024 or something. So it's just pushing back the timeline.
After the
I don't see
Second
a reason.
American Civil War, is that what they said?
Yeah, I don't pay attention to that
Something
stuff.
like that.
It's
Okay.
like it so doesn't matter to think about like it's so not relevant to the individual story.
Yeah.
If you need to have that like background that it happened somewhere in the past, fine. You know, I'm perfectly fine no prizing the idea that like the eugenics wars happened kind of in secret and they happened.
Mm.
Like let's pretend that happened and try not to worry about it.
Also, things within the series are kind of retconned with a line, like in Trials and Tribulations, for example.
Yeah.
The Klingons, they're like, why do they look different? And Worf is like, we just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Right. And I certainly didn't need that Enterprise episode where they did an entire episode as to what happened and there was like an augment virus and whatever. So unnecessary to me.
Yeah, but
personally.
like if something is weird with the timeline, just know there's probably a throwaway line somewhere that explains it.
Also,
Not a
the
throwaway
fact
line,
that
but it's something that
it's
wasn't
not real life. Like, it's okay that in that world the eugenics wars happened in the 90s. That is not our world. It is a fictional world, and I don't want to be one of those people who's like it's just a TV show. I do hate that because what is that argument? But
Yeah.
but it can be a world that's not our world and say, yeah, in this universe there were augment wars, eugenics wars in the 90s. Like I think that's okay.
I
yeah,
mean,
and
but
also wars in our world impact things in different ways that don't line up. You know, when you're thinking of them in a broader scope, they don't line up. You know, ABC. You know, the impacts of things are wibbly wobbly.
Messy, yeah.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Isn't the point of Star Trek though that like this is a possible good future that we can have?
If we work at it.
Yeah.
That's always the caveat. If we get our shit together, we can have a world where a scarcity is a thing of the past and we can be cooperative and go to the stars and have a future that's better than our past because humanity, we fucked up a lot. So if we get it together and start caring about each other and cooperating, we can go to the future. But that's the point. I mean, it's not.
Hey guys, time's ticking. Listeners, start fixing the
Right.
world now.
But it's not a documentary. I mean,
Right.
you know, someone made an offhand line in Space Seed that, yeah, he left Earth in the 1990s. Okay, but in real life, like, unless someone was going to have a con and make that happen, it wasn't going to happen. So, like, what are you worried about? What is that giving you to know that that was pushed back in time? Because you're just going to have to do it again in 10 years when that hasn't happened? Like, it just seems silly to me.
And when you think about it, I'm sure they have like a show Bible where, you know, they show the strings that are connected here and there, and maybe things that maybe don't have good continuity in one series will later on. So that's just something to keep in mind. So you don't get stressed out about like timeline continuity later. It might be addressed in other series, or it might have been addressed in one line in an episode prior. Just keep an open mind, continue to watch, and especially watch DS9.
All these fandoms have that, right? Like James from Texas in the Twitch chat, twitch.tv/the Keeg Show, says, yeah, I hate stories that are just trying to fix a continuity thing. Superhero comics do that too much. I totally agree. That's my bread and butter is superhero comics. But like Star Wars has it. Any of these franchises that started in the past and have continued to make projects into the future, but then also are going back and forth chronologically, have to, you know, do things to try to. They're always trying to like fix continuity or explain things that don't need to be explained. The Young Indiana Jones Chronicles doesn't need to exist. I've been watching some of the episodes. George Lucas didn't need to do that. You don't need to find a reason to explain every little thing.
Yeah, why he has the jacket.
He likes the stuff that he does. I don't anything George Lucas does, I don't blame him, because it's like I would go deep with any world that I created. But is it necessary? No.
I
You're
mean,
right.
we could use some fixes to American Graffiti while he's at it, you know. There's some moments in that movie that are a little questionable.
I haven't
Yeah.
seen it, so I don't know, but I get it. I mean,
It's
he
the
goes
50s.
back and he changes everything, you know.
Yeah.
But a lot of these things, even like X-Men, Marvel comics operate on a sliding timeline, which I feel like is more like Star Trek. Star Trek kind of does a sliding timeline in this respect because things just kind of, you know, move forward and it is what it is.
Yeah, I mean, it's nice that, you know, before what's the word? Shared universes were a thing. Star Trek had shared universes.
Mhm.
It just wasn't questioned, and it inspired Stargate to do the same thing and all that stuff. And it all just kind of fit together without having to cross over too much.
Yeah.
And yeah, a sliding time scale, I guess so. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess that makes sense. But they're not like cartoon characters where they're not going to age. So
Right.
you know, you don't need the same kind of X-Men sliding time scale where, you know, what are Jean and Scott about 30 now?
No, I don't agree with that. I have my own
Where-
opinions about X-Men. You have to count the Marvel comic universe by how old Kitty is then and now, because that's right.
Kitty?
Like,
Oh.
yeah, Kitty Pryde.
Kitty Pryde.
Kitty started with at 13. How old is
So
she now?
she's in her. She's for me the way because I have to keep track of her, the New Mutants, the younger generation. I think Kitty is in her late 20s.
Late 20s. Okay.
I think mid to late 20s. Just like Nightwing is in his late 20s in my opinion, in DC. So you count DC by Nightwing because Robin.
So Nightwing and Kitty are similar age? I think that's a little crazy because I think Nightwing and Spider-Man are the same age.
Spider-Man and
Oh.
Kitty are. No, Spider-Man's probably a couple years older than Kitty.
Remember,
you know,
Dick Grayson premiered in 1940 or whatever.
well, the DC Age of Heroes is longer than Marvel's Age of Heroes. Like
Clearly.
so,
But
because
I think that he was 16 at the same time Peter Parker was 16, which is also, by the way, the same time that Iceman was 16 and Human
Right.
Torch was 16.
I can't do the cross universe thing. I can't.
Sorry, we got to do it.
No.
You
You got to compare each universe. So in Marvel,
you started it. You said Dick Grayson is the same age as Kitty Pryde. He is a generation of heroes older
now,
than Kitty Pryde.
currently. But yeah, but the generations are different in DC and Marvel. Spider-Man is like 2 years, 3 years older than Kitty. Iceman is about Spider-Man's age. Human Torch
Yeah,
is about
so is-
Spider-Man's age.
Yeah,
But, like-
so is Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson's the same age as those guys.
Yeah, but he's been heroing longer because the DC Age of Heroes is longer.
So?
Anyway,
He started when he was like 11.
Dick.
Yes, Dick.
Yeah, no, I was calling you. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, what was I saying? How was I?
I don't know. We were on Strange New Worlds. I have opinions on
Yeah.
Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I have to get them out or
Okay, yeah.
first.
Tell us about that episode where, yeah, tell us.
Yeah,
about it.
so you saw it, Dimitri, right?
I saw it. Yeah, I'm up to speed.
Okay, so here was generally my issue with it is, so it was trying to do a story where thematically you can't control the past, you can only control what happens from now on, right? And within the story, spoiler alert, they have the opportunity to go and kill young Khan, to go and kill child Khan.
Yeah.
Now,
By the way, can I add something? For the first time ever, they're getting closer to the actual ethnicity that he should be.
I pointed out in one of the Star Trek groups, hey, his first time is played by a South Asian. I was wrong. Played by a Latinx kid.
So
Not a
I was
South
doing the research into it and I was trying to figure it out. I don't think there's anything conclusive, but yes, yeah. Anyway, sorry.
From the kid's past credits, he
Yeah.
speaks Spanish and whatever.
Yeah.
So my understanding is that he's not South Asian. At some point, it would be great to get a South Asian Khan.
His name is Khan. It's like
Khan
what?
Singh. Khan.
Right.
Singh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's his name.
Yeah.
Anyway, so there's an opportunity to kill him. Now remember, so this is going into a lot. I'm sorry, but the allegory that the augments are, the allegory that the eugenics people are, that is an allegory for Hitler's dream, right? It is about eugenics. It is about the perfect man. It is about breeding imperfections out of humanity. The augments are a Nazi allegory. Khan is not a good guy. There's nothing redeeming about Khan. He's a bad guy who thinks that you and I shouldn't exist because we are not white, right? I mean, look, he's not, but I mean, he doesn't, because we're not the perfect man, right?
Right. The perfect race, right?
The perfect race, the perfect man. And in Strange New Worlds, it was very interesting because Strange New Worlds is particularly trying to make the augments a little bit more of a queer allegory or a trans allegory. And you saw that in the trial episode that we had before Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And I thought that was one of my favorite episodes I think I've ever seen. I thought it was really great. And I thought that the allegory came through. Actually, there was also a immigrant allegory in there too. So there's a lot in there that was like really, really cool. But you do have these two allegories butting up against each other, and the question is, can they coexist? Now, what I love about Star Trek fans is they can hold two ideas in their minds at the same time, but it is two opposing ideas, right? You have the exact same allegory, one is Nazis and one is the exact opposite. It's queer people and immigrants, right? But they're using the same people. But like, they've created these Illyrians who are a race that sort of culturally augment themselves, so it's a little bit different. That's all fine. So this episode after this, Tomorrow and Tomorrow, they've decided to go back and they have this opportunity to kill baby Hitler. And the reason they don't is, hey, it leads to something good. But there was a genocide there, right? And as a Jewish person, I'm sorry, you kill Hitler. You do it. I don't know how history changes, but that's 6 million people. In real life, it's 11 million people die because of this man. In fiction, I don't know how many millions die in the eugenics wars. I don't care. But like, you kill Hitler. You do it if you have the opportunity. And that's a fairly simple one, right? Even if it changes the future. And I guess my thought is they didn't have to do that story. Like, I know it brings up a lot of things of like, you know, if you change the past this way, they didn't have to do it. They didn't have to go and meet Baby Khan. You don't have to go meet Baby Hitler if you don't want to. Someone's actually writing those stories. You don't have to do that one, you know? And I guess, so I was thinking about the episode from the first season where there's this utopic society and it's like, it's an adaptation of an Ursula K. Le Guin's short story where the entire utopic society is based on like the killing of a child.
Oh yeah.
Remember this episode?
Yeah.
It was a really great episode. But this idea was, in the Federation, it doesn't matter how good the universe is, if it causes one person pain, then it's not really that moral a society, right? And that's the lesson we learned from that episode. It was this futuristic, wonderful, beautiful world, but a child had to die every 5 years for it to keep running the way it did.
Yeah.
And here we are in this episode saying that our utopic society, our Federation future, is worth the death of millions. And it just felt so like, I don't know if I can go down this road with you guys, you know? And so it really wasn't my favorite episode for all of those reasons. But one of the things I love about Star Trek is it makes you ask those questions. Even in an episode that I don't like, I still have all this analysis of it. Yeah. So, thoughts? Go ahead.
A couple things.
Am I wrong?
Something that we just touched on earlier, actor Desmond Savan is both Latino and South Asian descent, according to the sources denofgeek.com as of 5 days ago. I also tried to look into that, and I had come across, like, I don't think there's anything conclusive. So if you can trust denofgeek.com, then that
I'll choose to.
You know, I mean, it's better than Benedict Cumberbatch. I'll say that. Whatever they do.
Yeah, that was like going backwards.
Yeah. But I agree. I see what you're seeing, and this is the problem with fiction versus real life and basing things and making allegories and whatnot. One could say the argument of they had to stop the one child from dying on that world is that world takes place in the present and doesn't fracture time, versus anything you do in the past would fracture time unless it was meant to be in the first place. Right?
Right. But we live here. We live in this.
So
I have no guarantee.
Don't write the episode that way in the first place, regardless of in the universe however.
Yeah, I'd say skip
I
skip
agree.
that episode. I
Okay.
don't know. Am I wrong?
Well, Star Trek always asks the like, again, air quotes, typical ethical questions. And this is one of the, most prominent ethical questions. If you could go back in time and kill Hitler, or in this context, Khan, would you and why? Or wouldn't you and why not? And I think could Star Trek continue without asking that specific ethical question? Yeah, but it is a new form of media that presents that question within this context, and maybe somebody, not you and not myself, because I've seen this question, and I, like even in Doctor Who and things like that, they ask these questions. But this puts it within a context that maybe other people are going to think about it, and is it for me? It's not for me either, but it's there and it's not for us, but this is an ethical question that's important to think about. So I don't know. I have mixed feelings about that, but in general, I think presenting it is I'm not going to say important, but it is something that does have to happen in whatever form of media. Does it have to happen in Star Trek? Not necessarily, but I don't know.
Yeah.
That is a tough one though.
Also,
Right, because the episode is positing that we don't get to the Star Trek future if we don't go through genocide.
Yeah.
And that seems so nihilistic in a way that I don't think of Star Trek. The
yeah.
idea that, like, no, we have to suffer right now for a future good. And you know what?
Can
I'll
I
go
re-
ahead and say it feels Christian in a way that I don't necessarily understand.
Can I
As a Jewish person sorry, go ahead.
sorry, can I reframe? I get what you're saying. Can I reframe it? And it's not about the suffering that brings us, it's that mankind needs to make their choices, whether they're good or bad. That you're only in charge of your own destiny, and you can't take future destiny to change past destiny. Like you have to, or not destiny, free will, right? So you can't take your free will and impose it upon the past. Like
That's
you
true.
have to make your decisions. Everybody has to go through their bad relationship, and it sucks, but it kind of makes you who you are, even if it's really bad. Like I know we want to change the past, but can we?
Well, the other thing is, it's like, and my answer personally to these things are, what if I go back and change something and it's way worse? Because that's the ultimate fear, that like, yeah, we might be stopping this bad thing, but could it open the door for even worse things to happen and more atrocities? So it's like, that question should be asked, but
Yeah.
and I see why it's being asked, but yeah.
There's a Hulu show based off of, I believe it's Stephen King. I can't be so sure. It's called 11/22/63, and it's a time.
I can't deal with like alternate World War II histories.
Oh,
I'm
like
not
Man of the High Tower.
There's
Oh,
so
man,
much
yeah,
like
yeah.
weird, Nazi fetishization in
This
science
isn't
fiction.
Nazis though. 11/22/63 is about the assassination of JFK.
Oh, right.
He goes back in time. It's this constant thing, and there's rules about the time travel where he can't just keep repeating the same thing. Like every time he travels back, he travels to the same point, and it resets anything he did. So he goes back, and spoiler, he stops the assassination, but it makes the world worse because JFK stayed alive, stayed president, and like things became so much worse in present day.
Sure.
But he met the love of his life in the past, and he had to reset it and not ever have that relationship with her. That part was actually.
I think the Orville did a great episode on this. I think the Orville is such a great like companion piece to all of Star Trek, because it's clearly made by people who really love Star Trek.
Yeah.
They did a great episode where one of the characters gets stuck in the past.
Oof. Yeah.
Brutal. And the captain has to go back and bring him back, and yeah, it's so brutal.
It
it's
is
so
real, yeah.
It's so well done. I was such a fan.
Lauren, are you a fan of Orville?
I saw the first season, but I never
Go on to the first and the second and third because it just gets better.
Yeah, I did like it a lot. I don't know why I didn't finish,
It's
but I will.
goofy in the first couple episodes. It's goofy. Like I
thought it was supposed to be goofy the whole time.
It does it.
It gets less goofy generally, but it's what I love is that it's really in conversation with Star Trek. There are episodes where the first act is almost like word for word an episode you've seen, and then it goes in a whole different direction, and it's like this is so smart, such a great way to do it. It's Star Trek fan fiction, but in the best way.
Yeah, that's how I see like The Mandalorian and all of the Dave Filoni stuff. Like it's just Star Wars fan fiction that has a budget and really good, passionate people on it.
Yeah.
I love things like that.
I think a lot of these franchises need people who both love the franchise, but also are okay with progressing the franchise. Because sometimes
Yes.
you get stuck in the past of your own nostalgia and you just spin your wheels. And then that's fan fiction. Like, fan fiction to me is just like, let's keep spinning our wheels and not make progress. But like this episode of Orville, like, I'm trying to boil down the plot. The crew goes back in the past, then they have to leave one of their crew members behind. But then they go forward 5 years, so they're still in the past, and the crew member, I think it's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever. The crew member has.
Well, they're not able to come back and save him until 5 years later. So he has now created an entire life. He's gotten married. He has kids. He thought he was never going back to the future. He's like, I'm going to start a life and like trying to have a quiet, good life. And he's doing really, really well. And they have to go bring him back and erase everything he did, so his life never happened.
His unborn child.
Right. They go back to earlier to.
Stop that from no, there's a Star Trek episode that's similar to that where somebody gets stuck on the planet and they like end up in a relationship with a woman and I think it's in Voyager and I think it's the Doctor, but
I was thinking about that Deep Space Nine episode where they crash on the planet and that whole society grows up and they have to decide whether to escape and destroy that whole colony.
Yeah.
Oh, what a great episode.
That's a very Star Trek trope.
Only problem. Yeah.
Orville gets a lot better because it stays funny.
Oh, I loved it in the beginning too. Like I just thought it was a funny, goofy time.
It was a goofy time, but they get less goofy, but they stay funny. But it's more, it's less one-liners and it's more like situational comedy, which I like.
I like that too. I will have to go finish it now.
Orville definitely deserves. If not another season, then the respect of the Star Trek fandom.
I think it does.
I think it has it.
Yeah.
It's just tough with Seth MacFarlane.
We know people who love it in the Trek community.
Yeah, people seem to really like it.
But people hated it at first.
Well,
because it's Seth MacFarlane. People
hate new things. That's okay.
Yeah. Well, people hated all of every single Star Trek that has come out. People in the beginning are like, no, this sucks. This isn't like TNG, but it was DS9. Or like, this isn't like DS9, but it's Voyager, and that stuff happens.
Yeah.
Throughout history.
I want to know your guys' opinions about Picard. 3 seasons. It came, it went. We came, we saw. Did we conquer?
I am always thankful for all Star Trek media. I'm going to start with that. And not all of them are for everyone. I am glad that Picard revisited characters that we love. The first and second season, a little rough. I feel that with all of the knowledge that we have about Picard and the Star Trek world as a whole, it could have been stronger in the first couple seasons had they taken it in a more, I guess, solid direction. I feel it was kind of like, oh, we're going to focus on Picard and his new life and what does it mean to be like an elderly man who was once great and questioning everything that you've done. And that's a compelling thing, but it just didn't feel solidified in the first season. And the second season,
I think a good descriptor is bonkers. It was just it went off the rails. It went off the rails. Yeah, I agree with all of that. Do you guys watch Steve Shives on YouTube? His Star Trek videos are really good. He was not a particular fan of Picard season 3. I liked season 3 a lot while I was watching. The question that I had while I was watching was, why not the changelings? Right? Because you set up the changelings where, my girl here, the female founder, you set them up as the big bad, and then it shifts to the Borg, spoiler alert.
Yeah.
That's the big twist, is that the
Yeah.
Borg are the big bad guys. And I felt personally like we had put the Borg away. The Borg
I thought
were,
after season 2 we got rid of didn't the
well,
Borg
yeah. I think season 2, I think, was the dream season. I think that we can chalk that up to like, oh, did it happen? Who knows, right? I think it's a big dwy, a big don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Like, don't worry about whether that
I
actually.
never say skip seasons of anything. You don't need to watch season 2 of Picard, and I feel bad for saying that, but
Yeah, I'm
it
with
doesn't
you.
link anything.
It doesn't link anything. But I also thought we had put the Borg away with the end of Voyager, with multiple novels that had put them away, with First Contact,
And the founders are so insidious. It would have been so good.
It could have been great, and but I get thematically where they were coming from, right? If this is the last ride of the Next Generation crew, you want their biggest bad to come back, right? And that is the Borg, and I get that, but maybe it wasn't super necessary. Maybe not everything has to be thematically tied up in a bow like that. I personally love world building, not necessarily world referencing, and I actually did enjoy Picard 3.
Me too.
But I got that point. There was a lot of people who looked at it like, okay, well, this is a remix of this. Here's a remix of that. Like, we brought back Ro just to kill her, which felt hard.
But I'm glad.
You're right. The conversation, the scene was great.
Yeah, I'm glad they killed her though, because so many times it's like, oh, this person died. Just kidding.
Yeah.
No, I lost somebody I loved, and I felt. Sorry, I'm yelling.
No, you're not wrong.
But I loved that character so much, and
which is
I'm
why
glad
there's so
they
much.
took it there.
You bring her back. There's so much potential for that character in many other ways, or
But those are the kinds of important things that need to happen in Star Trek to progress the plot. And I actually did love season 3 because it felt like Star Trek. The other 2 seasons they felt like something, I don't know what, but it didn't feel like Star Trek. Season 3 felt like Star Trek, and all of the characters were back in their element. And I think if the storyline would have started with something similar to season 3, if that was season 1, it would have progressed into something that was like, holy shit, Star Trek, because it was solid in the 3rd season. But had that been the starting point, can't even imagine where they would have gone.
I agree. Like, with the origin story is that Patrick Stewart wanted something that was specifically him, right? And that didn't bring back Next Generation, was not a sequel to the Next Generation. And the fact that Jonathan Frakes was a director on it, it was like, well, this is too good to just leave on the floor. We have to do a Riker and Troy episode. So that's why they had it. In season 2, there were a lot of weird callbacks that kind of didn't mean anything. Like, Wesley Crusher comes back for a scene.
Yeah, why?
Completely out of nowhere. Here's what I was.
Did he transcend?
Well, he had ascended during
what's called a traveler.
He's become a traveler. But I thought they hinted at something really interesting, that the Gary 7, those people were the travelers, which I was like, oh, that's really great. Did you guys read Star Trek Year 5, the comic book series?
Mm-mm.
Super good. They did a Gary 7 arc that was really, really, really great and explained what Gary 7 was. If people don't know, Gary 7 was a backdoor pilot that Gene Roddenberry wrote as an episode of Star Trek, that he was trying to spin off Star Trek into this Doctor Who-esque other series. And it was Terry Garr was the sidekick, the companion. Yeah. Have you ever seen that episode, Gary 7?
I mean, I had to have, but it didn't stick.
Or it's Operation Earth, I think is the name of the episode. Anyway, it's an original series episode, but I think somewhere in the back of the minds of the season 2 writers, they wanted to tie the Travelers into the Gary 7, whatever that was, and they just kind of biffed it. It didn't connect. It didn't make any sense. They kind of half-assed telling that story, and if you watch it again, you're like, oh, there is something you're trying to do with those disparate threads of Star Trek, but it doesn't come together. And I wish that.
You know what it felt like was the last episode of Enterprise, which is like season 2 felt like the last episode of Enterprise because they were trying to tie in things that like, and it didn't make sense, and it felt rushed and weird, and it's like, what guys, what are we doing?
I
Or
was
the
so
ending of
bored.
Voyager where you find out that Seven and Chakotay were in a relationship.
I'm
Like,
leaving.
you're like, you're starting this now? Now?
Yeah,
We're
like,
almost done. Can't bring out a new course now.
yeah.
I was bored by Picard season 2, which I think is the biggest thing. I think that
Yeah.
like I think that media in and of itself, like the worst you
I just want to
do-
clarify, we're talking about season 2, not season 3.
Yeah.
Season 3 was very exciting. There were a lot of great episodes.
Yeah.
I have my issues with like the nostalgia fest of it. I wish that the changelings were the main villain, and
Yeah.
I like when a story follows the story that it starts. I like when a punchline matches the setup.
Yeah.
And sometimes I get what I call twist fatigue, where like stories really want to surprise you in some way, and you're like, this wasn't necessary. I didn't need the mystery box. I didn't need
Yeah.
a big twist here. I could have just done with like, this is one of the things that I loved about Deep Space Nine. It sets up a villain. That's the villain.
Yeah.
The twists are like people change alliances and all this stuff, but there's not like the secret was the Q the whole time. We fucking got you. Like there's no one's trying to get you. Like just tell this fucking story.
Yeah.
Sorry, Dimithri.
Yeah, season 2 bored me. I struggled through watching season 2 because I didn't watch it when it was coming out because it was so boring. Like I watched the first episode when it first premiered, and then I was like, I just can't.
See, the first 2 episodes, I was like, okay, where is this going? And by the third, I was like, get me out of here.
Yep.
Yeah. Season 3 I liked, except for I'm tired of character X having a child. And now the child continues where character X left off. I don't like that. And I haven't liked that since what I always harken back to is Batman back in the old comics had like stories written by Alfred where it was out of continuity, where it was Bruce Wayne has a child. Robin raises Batman 2. The Joker has a child named Joker Jr. Now we got Batman 2 versus Joker Jr. and they're just like, and it's like, it's the same thing.
Let them have a different life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Star Wars kind of did it too. With like, okay, the Emperor's granddaughter versus Luke Skywalker's nephew, but it's just like, I'm tired of that. Yeah. So
yeah, I don't know if I
son,
super bought into the idea that Beverly would raise a child for 20 years completely on her own and cut everyone off. I don't know that I super bought that, but like that's the story they wanted to tell, so I was like, let's go with it. Because I was a shipper of those two.
Yeah,
I thought they had the thing, and it's a little sad.
I wish Beverly would have stayed with the ghost, personally.
Yeah, no, I think we all do.
I heard about that.
That's the episode that everyone should watch.
Sub Rosa, that may become a Star Trek fan. Watch Sub Rosa.
Oh, it's such a weird episode. But you know what I realized when I realized
they're in Space Ireland.
They are.
Or Space Scotland or something.
I've heard about that one. Okay.
I think it is Scotland.
Space Scotland.
It's in a castle, right?
Kind of like a manor.
Oh, manor. Okay.
It's like Beverly, the Crusher Manor or whatever.
I call it a keep.
That's right. But I remember what I didn't like when I was like, I'm done with season 2 of Picard. And I want to preface this with, I think it is so important to address trauma. And I think it's so important to represent working through trauma in media, and especially popular media like Star Trek. However, do I think that we had to be like, oh, well, they're acting this way because of trauma. That person's acting that way because of trauma. It got to the point where they met where they met a guy in an interview room. And I was telling my husband, I was like, I bet we're going to learn about this guy's trauma. We get a fucking flashback to this guy's childhood as soon as I say that.
Oh,
and I was like, I can't do this anymore. I've got my own shit to work through. I can't work through all of these character stuff. Not this much.
Yeah.
And it just wasn't done in a meaningful way is my main issue. But it was just like, oh, everybody's messed up, you guys.
I also don't like the plot point of getting stuck in the past that's an actual like the present, I guess, or present-ish. I'm like, I don't know. It just was like, okay, so they get to deal
It
with
takes
iPhones.
you out of it.
Like,
Yeah.
cool. Like, what does Picard think about an iPhone? Like, I don't care.
Right, and the metaphysics of it didn't track, like just the stuff with Guinan where she didn't recognize Picard even though they had met back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
It just didn't track, and then there was the thing about the punk on the bus that like if he does remember Kirk and Spock coming into the do you know what we're talking about, Dimitri? The punk on the bus who was like, "Oh, don't fuck with me, my neck." That was a callback to Star Trek 4, where that same actor who was a punk on the bus got Vulcan nerve pinched by Spock.
I've seen both, but I didn't put the two together.
You didn't put that together. I mean, it's just if one is true, the other can't be true. So like, it just was stupid, and it was fan servicey, and I think that it's okay to not have that in your personal continuity. It's okay just to be like, they'll reference it if they need it, but otherwise, it just kind of didn't happen.
Yeah, I don't. Let's get off of Picard season. Picard. Lower Decks.
I'm a fan. I love it.
I love it.
They're doing a live action crossover coming up.
Very exciting.
That's wild to me. That is the
I love
wildest
that
thing.
So many Lower Decks people are comedy people from our community who are they're all UCB people, and so it's really cool to see Star Trek being done. I think it's the closest thing to me doing Star Trek, right? It's my friends are on it. People who have a similar relationship to Star Trek are on it. They're making fun of the fun things, and it is the thing we were talking about when we were talking about Next Generation, that it's just such comfort food, and it's just like these characters feel the way about Star Trek that I feel about Star Trek, and maybe that's a little bit meta, and I get why some people would not be super into that, but it really is the story of people we were talking about Data's Day, right? Like that's the main story of every Lower Decks episode. Like, hey, we're going to get together and play a Klingon RPG today. Yeah, that's for sure something Geordi and Data did, and we just never saw it, right? I'm a huge fan.
I love day in the lives of characters that normally don't have days in the lives, right? Like, or franchises or, premises. Like, I want to know, like in X-Men, I want to know what the kids are up to. Just like, what are X-Men up to on their days off? Some of the cool issues of X-Men is like they play baseball or basketball or whatever, and like we just kind of see like what is it like when Nightcrawler plays a sport.
I was just talking about this particularly because I've been going back and reading the Chris Claremont stuff, and the Claremont stuff has very, very little of that. Like every episode is very plot in a good way because obviously he's the legend. But my X-Men era is the Scott Lobdell, Fabian Nicieza, like the early to mid 90s, where you have a big event like an Executioner song, and then the next 4 issues are talking issues. We're gonna have a conversation between Scott and Cable because they need to work out the fact that he's his son from the future. Like we're gonna work through that for an issue, One of my favorite issues of X-Men is Iceman taking Rogue home to meet his parents. And it's just like such a beautiful, like it's just them on a road trip. And I think the B story of that issue is Psylocke and Warren going on a date and being like, can we do this without a bunch of like clones and murder and supervillains? And they're like, yeah, maybe we could just fall in love just like normal people. And it's just such a beautiful issue because just some of that good old fashioned soap opera,
It's funny because a lot of like TikTok stuff is us surmising, maybe?
Summarizing?
I'm thinking surmising, but
say the sentence.
that it's TikTok content creators surmising like what is the favorite dessert of all their favorite characters.
Yes.
If it's never been explicitly stated, like what are these favorite desserts? Just random things. For some reason, as a longtime fan, I like learning those things. Or
I think surmising is the correct word, by the way.
Surmising is right, sure.
Okay. Yes, it is. suppose that something is true without having evidence to confirm it. Surmising. What was I saying? So
we're talking about Lower Decks, I think.
Lower Decks does kind of like that, like, even though they're not like, specifically Lower Decks characters, I want to know what they do on their day off. I want to know how they feel about X, Y, and Z. And I think that's kind of the joy of Lower Decks.
There was an episode. Yeah, there was an episode of TNG. I forget what it's called, but Picard goes to Risa, and you get to see him just as kind of like a boring vacationer for a minute. It gets more exciting, but seeing our characters that we love just doing kind of the monotony of everyday life or something that's very normal brings us so much closer to them, because it's like, oh, like I know what that's like, and it's really nice to see them experience it too. It takes away a bit of the mystery, but in a good way.
In a good way. I mean, I think one of the wonderful things about Star Trek is it invites you to imagine what it would be like to live in that world, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many Star Trek characters, and like there's so many, every ship has so much crew. You don't have to be Luke Skywalker. The question is like, I could be a yeoman on a ship, or I could be an engineer or whatever on a ship. What would my life be like? And having those moments where you see like, you know, Dabo tournament or whatever, you're like, yeah, this is what daily life would be. It would be doing Tai Chi with Worf or whatever, you know.
Yeah.
It's the fun of all that.
Is it bad that I want to know which characters are hooking up that we don't see, like that are
that is the most important thing.
I want to know all of that business.
Yeah.
I do assume they're all hooking up.
I would randomly be like, computer, where is this person? Okay, computer, where is that?
Yeah, because it answers you, it tells you.
Does it really?
There's no. Yeah, you're right. That's a big privacy violation.
Yeah.
Well, but I'm a chismosa, so I just will find things out within the parameters of the way that I'm able to.
Yeah,
for sure.
Without breaking protocol.
Right.
Yep.
If you got a Marauders map, you're like, oh, yeah, it's kind of like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
yeah, I would want to know who's hooking up to.
Who do you guys think is hooking up that we never see hook up?
Ooh. I think Jadzia, before she met Worf, was just, well, it's canon that she was like going on dates with like everyone, so she was hooking up all over the place.
But never with Julian.
No.
He wouldn't cross that line. Julian wanted it too much.
He did.
He wanted it too badly. If he had just been chill, he could have been with Jadzia many times. He could have been with the worm.
Well, she even admitted, like, if Worf hadn't have come along, right, Julian would have been the one. But I think the thing is, she didn't want to ruin their friendship, and he was still too, like, eager.
He was too eager.
So it would, like, had it gone sideways, it would have ruined their friendship, and I think she valued that too much. That got a lot deeper than I thought it was going, but
that's true.
No, that was perfect.
No pun intended. But
wait,
but Jadzia was hooking up all over.
Did Worf Indiana ever actually?
Yeah, they definitely knocked the boots for sure.
Yeah. Cool. But they were just, I think they were more friends with benefits, and they did date briefly.
They tried it, and it just clearly
didn't work. Yeah.
I hate to get into the nitty gritty about Klingon physiology, but
two dicks?
Do they?
I talked about this at length on another podcast, actually. No pun intended.
At lengths.
At lengths. Okay, so here's my opinion. I'm so sorry. There's a scene in Discovery where a Klingon is peeing on a wall, and you can see clearly two streams, and you see them land on the wall. Canon, there are at least two holes from which urine exits. I'm going
to urethras.
Yeah. But
we don't know about two.
Well, it could be one diverging urethra.
Could be, yeah.
And that is actually my theory. I actually think they have one penis
with multiple holes, like a flute.
With two holes,
like
one that goes straight and one that goes up. In order to ensure the insemination of a Klingon female.
Well, because
So that's my theory. The other theory is that they have two, which that could be fun as well. However, is it a physiological thing in order to procreate as Klingons, or is it just for fun butt stuff? Who knows?
Well, we do know that Klingons have backup organs, right?
That's true.
They have two sets of hearts, two sets of lungs, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's from the episode where Worf gets
How do they
paralyzed.
hold all the organs? How does
Do
that
they have 4 balls then?
Well, we're not doubling everything.
What if
right?
they have 1 big ball?
One big ball.
Like a
Are you
wrecking ball
regretting
situation?
inviting me on here?
No,
This
I'm
is
just-
why Gabrielle Union was excited to play Klingon.
Wait, what?
You know,
Wait, why did
Gabrielle Union was a Klingon on Deep Space Nine. You have to watch Deep Space Nine.
I do love Gabrielle Union.
Yeah.
y'all,
I'm
I
gonna-
was trying to behave myself. And for the record,
Who was asking you to?
I didn't bring it up.
Look, it's all about our comfortability, and that's okay.
That's
I'm
true.
okay with it. I just typed in Klingon penis into.
You're going on a
trying to-
list.
I'm trying to see. Well, we're assuming that the two penises are the same size. One could be a sexual penis, and the other could be
Be like a
For
urethra.
fun.
yeah, a smaller. Let's just say a
Like a
clit-
vibrating one just for the clip.
like a clit sized penis.
Clip stimulator. Like it's the whole thing is in the shape of like the bunny or the whatever, the rabbit.
Rabbit.
Yeah.
Okay.
So because we're thinking in the there's different ways that this could be a thing, you know, but
Yeah, I mean, you see what the female changeling is doing behind me. She's handling a Klingon penis. One,
Or yeah, both of them.
yeah.
yeah, and then I mean what we don't know what the female Klingon physiology is, right?
Right.
That has not been mentioned.
Right.
However,
So-
they do seem to only have 2 breasts. So, so maybe external things there is only one set or whatever.
Maybe there's like if they go
Memories,
down,
they only have 2.
if there's an infection, there's like tissue to like replace that. If there's like an infection or something.
Or maybe they have smaller teats going all the way down.
Yeah.
Mm.
Six nipples.
Wait, have we ever seen
Somebody-
Klingon midriff?
No, not to my knowledge.
We
We've
have
seen
boo-
B'Elanna's, but
we've-
she's half human.
We've seen boob window. The Duras sisters have shown us boob window.
Okay.
Oh hell yeah! And Jadzia's wedding dress.
It's true. Yeah.
She's not a Klingon, but
Yeah. Interesting. Similar but different when what's his name in Discovery ends up being a Klingon in disguise. I like that whole thing, but I don't understand how that all works.
Well, it's just we've seen it before with Klingons. I mean, it's exactly what Lauren brought up before, the idea that like, oh, those are Klingons, that TNG Klingons look different, or DS9 Klingons look different from original series Klingons. This shows sort of the first version of what that surgery would have looked like. Like, we know that guy, Arn Darvin, from the Tribbles episodes, was a Klingon who was surgically altered to look human. And we have, like, there's a comic book that kind of delves into his background, that he was always, like, a shorter Klingon. So he was, like, never considered for the warrior class because he was so diminutive. And so he was, like, a perfect candidate to become this human spy. But yeah, it was so brutal the way they did that on Discovery, showing, like, what the surgery would be like and how scary it was. And, yeah, I just thought they did it so well. And obviously the humans looked a lot different from the Klingons in Discovery. Like,
Yeah.
but, you know, it's what I was saying before. I think the purpose of making Klingons in Discovery look so different and so wild was to make it look more alien than we had ever seen before. Because any Klingons we had ever seen are like, okay, they're kind of like us. They have these ridges. They're warriors, whatever. But the Klingons on Discovery were so unrecognizable to, like, anything we have in terms of society or life. So having them be like, you know, reptilian and a little bit xenomorphy and, you know, all of those things, I thought was really an interesting take on it. And I thought it made that moment where he's like going through surgery, I thought it made it feel more visceral.
It was gruesome. Yeah.
Gruesome.
Yeah.
Honestly-
I laughed at Ridged for your pleasure, but that's just.
I mean, that if we know anything about Klingon penises, they are definitely ridged. I mean, I don't know that, but
But we know
Let's
it for
stop
a fact.
talking.
And so are Bajoran penises, by the way.
What are
Yeah,
Bajoran penises like?
They gotta be ridged, right?
probably humanoid, but they have nose ridges, so we can
So
assume.
it's just a little.
Sometimes that's enough.
I hate to bring up actual human physiological,
It's about the motion of the ocean.
but it's on the frenulum.
Yes, it's on the bottom, yeah.
Could be.
But you don't know Bajoran clitorises might be on the bottom.
Oh, that's true.
Wait, that's not where human ones are?
Uh-oh. Oh, no.
You need to
This is
spend
gonna
a
be-
little. I
I'm
never
joking.
recommend this, but you
gonna
might
be a
need to
different
spend more
podcast.
time on the internet.
Yeah. I'll have to do my research. I didn't know I had to research that to be talking Star Trek, so.
Yeah. Well, like
Um,
I said in the beginning, Star Trek encompasses everything about humanity.
Right. It's interesting that Star Trek is very progressive, very, sexually free orientation and representation and whatnot. X-Men is catching up. X-Men has decided that because they live forever and they're on their own island, who's to say they have to like deal with the norms of,
Yeah, but X-Men's always been pretty horny, too.
Yeah, but like publicly horny? They are publicly horny right now.
It's always been subtext, but it's pretty horny. Like, Chris Claremont loved himself some bondage gear. I mean, do you remember the Hellfire Club? You know, the Hellfire Club is a real thing.
Like
It's based on a real, it's based on a real thing. It's based on an episode of the 60s Avengers show where Emma Peel went and was dressed like Emma Frost.
Oh, is that where Emma Frost came from?
Yeah, it came from Emma Peel on that episode of the Avengers, and they go visit the Hellfire Club. And the Hellfire Club, I mean, that's pretty early on in the Claremont run. It's like, oh yeah, this is all just about how horny people are, and
Right.
like the mutant powers as an allegory for puberty and not being able to control your urges. I mean, one of the main characters of the Claremont thing is Rogue, and her whole thing is just like, I'm so horny, but I can't touch anyone.
I mean, yeah. Lauren, I don't know how caught up you are on X-Men comics, but there's a Summers family house on the moon where everybody gets their own room, and Wolverine and Cyclops have rooms that connect to Jean Grey's room.
They're in a thruple, like it's kind of official. It's on page. It's
they literally hang out a lot as a
Amazing.
Yeah.
I need to read them now.
Wolverine and Scott are no longer mad at each other because they're fucking.
They're working together in tandem.
Good for them. You know what? I love that for them. And
There's
I'm
a
so
lot
happy
going
for
on.
me now.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot.
I haven't read those comics since I was a kid, and they were different back then. They were.
I'm gonna get you back on the X-Men, the X-Men stuff, because I love what they're
Well,
doing.
you already did with that one.
I'll give you a reading list. That's fine.
Yeah, for sure. The
Well,
Krakoa
I will do
era
that.
is.
But you have to watch Deep Space Nine expeditiously. Deal?
I will. Yeah, I'll make that trade.
I'll start a watch party with you if you want to do like Deep Space Nine Club.
I want to be there.
You want in? Let's do it.
You're talking to me because
Yeah,
all of us.
So much to sign up for.
I mean, 1 or 2 episodes a week. That's not that crazy.
Yeah, that's true.
It's so much fun.
The best of all Trek. Get to hang out with this babe, with this hottie.
I've only seen pictures. I don't know who they are.
Oh, these are the founders.
No.
Oh, what's that?
Okay.
Well, you'll learn.
I'll learn in Deep Space Nine. We'll talk about it. Maybe we make something out of it. Make some content. I don't know, but we'll figure something out. As we wind things down for this episode.
We don't get to talk about comics.
Oh, let's talk about comics. Well, actually, you guys talk about your Deep Space Nine for like a little bit. I'll be right back.
Oh, I don't know what can I tell you about the comics, about what's going on in Star Trek comics right now?
Sure, but I will preface this with the only Star Trek comic I have actually read was the TNG Doctor Who crossover.
Oh, cool. Did you like that?
I did, because at the time I was like a big Whovian, not so much I still love it, but I'm not caught up. But I was so excited to see the Doctor on the Enterprise. So
yeah, absolutely. So Here's what's going on in Star Trek comics,
Oh
everybody.
boy.
So, do you know who Heather Antos is? Heather Antos is a comic book editor. She
Mhm.
was brought on by Disney 6-ish years ago to make the Star Wars comics at Marvel line up with Star Wars movies and make like the Star Wars comics line
I have heard about
popular.
her, but I'm not super familiar.
So IDW, the comic book company that has the license to like pretty much everything. They have Star Trek, Ninja Turtles, Ghostbusters, Thundercats. They have like every licensed thing that's not Marvel or DC is
Mhm.
IDW. So they poached Heather Antos, and she started a Star Trek line.
Oh.
So there are right now, I want to say 3 regular titles and some miniseries. So there is a Lower Decks adaptation. It's written by Ryan North, who was the creator of Squirrel Girl, or the main writer of Squirrel Girl, if you know that
Yeah.
character.
Mhm.
One of the books is being written by Christopher Cantwell, who was the producer of *Halt and Catch Fire*,
Okay.
the producer and writer of that, and also just finished like a really great Iron Man run, and is currently writing like Hellcat and a bunch of other good stuff.
Mhm.
And the other book is the main Star Trek book that is written by this writing team called Jackson Lanzig and Colin Kelly, and they just finished a really great like Captain America run, but they're writing the main Star Trek books. And these Star Trek books are both the 2 main ones, Star Trek and Star Trek Defiant, are really mashup crews. So the Star Trek book is captained by Cisco. This is takes place pre-Nemesis, but
Uh-huh.
post the end of Voyager. So Cisco has come back from the wormhole. His crew is like Data, Crusher, some original characters. Shax is on the ship from Lower Decks. It's really good. And on Defiant, it's captained by Worf, and his first officer
Mhm.
is Spock. And B'Elanna is on the ship, and
That makes me so
Lore
happy.
Lore is their computer, and they have to like they have to like keep their computer like under wraps because it's Lore. They have to like make sure he doesn't go crazy. But
Yeah.
they're doing all of this stuff in tandem with the actual writers' rooms, so they're trying to make it fit. Like obviously, the only things that are technically in continuity are whatever's on screen, but the books are really good. And right now, they are starting a multi-title crossover called Day of Blood. So the Kahless clone, the
Yeah.
Empire of the Empire, or the Emperor of the Empire, has decided to make war on all gods. So the Klingon, so he's like fighting against like the crystalline entities and the travelers and the Q, and so this is like the main story that's going on in Star Trek comics.
Yeah,
Go read Star Trek comics. It's great.
I
that's
will.
wild.
That's so intense.
It's so intense, and so much of it is so good. And the fact that they have Christopher Cantwell writing this book, I need that man to get his own Star Trek show, like toot sweet. It needs to happen right now.
Wait, is there like an app? Do you get the physical copies or do you have like one of the apps?
Am I allowed to say how I get my comics?
Oh,
Yeah, I'm not gonna say.
we'll talk about it later.
Yeah, we'll talk about it later.
There
But
are
but
multiple ways to support the comic book industry, and especially if you want to support Star Trek comics going forward, you can find your local comic shop at comicshoplocator.com.
yes,
And find
that
a
is the way
comic
to do it.
shop near you. There are also some Amazon Comixology.
Comixology is a good
Comixology
option.
thing. Star Trek is different because Star Trek is neither DC nor Marvel, so it is what IDW. Is that what you said?
It's IDW, yeah.
And that's a
See,
little
that's
bit
what I was
tougher.
wondering.
That's a little bit tougher, you know.
Well, that'll be on Comixology.
Would that be on? Okay, so
That would be
I
on
think
Comixology.
I have a comic book shop that I can order
Yeah.
to. So
And
yeah,
everything's being collected. One of the really great recent series that they did in Star Trek, just before Heather Antos came back onto the to be the group editor, is they did this series, or maybe it was her first series, was Star Trek Year 5. And it was such an amazing way to do a Star Trek comic. So it was the original series, it was Kirk and Spock and that crew, but it was the space between, it was the last year of the original 5-year mission, kind of leading into the movie era, the motion picture era.
mhm.
So it bridges that gap. I think it's 24 issues. It's really, really good, but it was written by a committee. It was written by a writer's room. So it included Colin Kelly and Jackson Lanzig. It included Jodie, why am I forgetting her name?
Foster.
Good. No. But it included it was a whole writer's room. Everyone got to do their own individual issues, but like it was written as a group. And there were so many great character moments for like Chekhov and Sulu and Uhura, and they brought on a Tholian onto the crew, so you like learn a little bit about the Tholians, which we never have. It was a really great series. Star Trek Year 5, I highly, highly recommend it. And that's all been collected. Here, do I have one? Yeah.
I am going to get into them because the first one that you were telling me about, that's right up my alley.
This is the first collection of Star Trek Year 5.
Hold it in front of your chest and then move your body forward.
Oh, I've seen that cover.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you can see a really beautiful artwork, obviously, and yeah.
Nice.
What is the comic that's the Dog of War? I keep seeing it.
Oh yeah, so that's one of the miniseries they're doing. So they're also doing a bunch of miniseries. So they have a Deep Space Nine miniseries where Quark is smuggling a corgi. It's very Cowboy Bebop in that way. Like the corgi has secrets, you know.
Yeah.
But like the whole crew of Deep Space Nine falls in love with the dog as you do. And so and including Quark. So he doesn't want to sell the dog to like these evil Orion pirates or whatever. So it's been a really fun series, and the artwork on it is really, really great. But they do miniseries all the time. Like they just finished a miniseries that was a tie-in to the latest Star Trek video game. I don't know if you guys are playing that. What's it called? Star Trek Resurgence or something? But they did the prequel to that, and that was pretty good. Yeah, there's just really good stuff going on in Star Trek comics right now. Cool. And this Day of Blood crossover that's coming in the next few months. They're billing it as like the very first time Star Trek has had like a multi-series crossover. That is not true. In the 1990s, they'd had something called Telepathy War, which crossed over Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, and the Starfleet Academy comics. So that was like the first one, but this is going to be really cool. So everyone's going to be fighting against Kahless. So that should be really fun.
Yeah.
Okay.
Read comics, everybody. Comics are good.
There's a comic out there for everyone. Like, no matter your fandom, like, that's what I try to, even though I focus on DC and Marvel, there's a lot of independent comics, there's a lot of third-party comic companies that are also just producing comics based on old properties. There's a new Darkwing Duck comic, there's a new Gargoyles comic, in case you were fans of the TV, like the cartoon.
Those are both Dynamite, right?
I think so.
Are you reading, by the way, 007? Philip Kennedy Johnson?
For King and Country, I think, or something. Yeah, I have not.
Myrmidon or something?
Not the new run, no. But there's like things for all these movies, all these things. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Rick and Morty has a comic. Like everything that you love out there has a comic.
Yep.
Which helps support the comic shops, because even if you just like Rick and Morty, don't be an asshole, because a lot of Rick and Morty fans are. Don't be jumping up asking for Szechuan sauce. But like, go get your Rick and Morty comic. There's, I think, 2 Rick and Morty comics, I think. And it's like...
Yeah, and I think it's being written by some people we know. I think Alex Ferrer is writing one of them. So it's support our friends.
Yeah.
Go...
Are we talking like our LA friends?
Yeah, our LA friends.
Our LA friends. LA friends. Sounds like ally friends. Anyway.
And our LA friends.
Yes, Star Trek comics, and there's a comic out there for everybody. What's coming up with Star Trek? What do we got to look forward to? Because it's 2023 right now, and like, sure, plans change, but like, are we still getting another Kelvin timeline movie?
I don't think so, honestly. I haven't heard like even any rumors about anything like that. Honestly, I think I think that brand, not that brand, but that style
is your audio sorry did your audio get was that just me?
I heard her, yeah.
It's me. Okay, sorry.
Hello.
Sorry, give me 1 sec. I can see you guys. What is going on here? My computer's getting...
And we can see you.
Yep.
Oh my god, I have so many comics to read, you guys.
Oh, I wonder if it's coming through on...
What is going on? Sorry, give me
We stayed on too long. Because we are having the most fun. and now technology doesn't want us to
There it is.
have this function.
It's my headphones. It wasn't even an internet connection or anything. It was my headphones. Sorry. Continue. What were you saying?
Oh, it's okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, it wasn't you.
Okay.
It was me.
Oh.
Yeah. It's not you, it's me.
The style of like the Kelvin universe and Discovery, I don't think is going to be the focus of Star Trek moving forward. I think honestly, because I hate to say this, but I think it might be a part to do with like Marvel fatigue and like the grand scale battles and fights and things like that. I think viewers are starting to get tired of that. So we're scaling back into more intimate styles of television.
That would be great.
Like Strange New Worlds. It's pulled back. You know, the battles are still great. But it focuses on the people and the characters. And I think that's what it's going to be moving forward. I think we might be done with the harkening back so much to and bringing in old characters because we got a lot of that in Picard season 3. So I think moving forward, it's going to be new characters, but within the same like comforting settings of you know the trio of Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and TNG. I think they're going to focus on moving toward that kind of vibe in the future, but that's just speculation. So,
well, here's a couple things that we do know. We know that there is a Section 31 television movie coming with Michelle Yeoh. That's all they could get her to commit to, which
it's fair.
Perfectly fine.
She's an Oscar winner now. She's got other things to do.
She doesn't need Star Trek, but the fact that they have her is very exciting. We know that they started the writer's room already for the Starfleet Academy series. And what we know about that is that takes place in the 31st century. So that is sort of contemporary with Discovery as Discovery ends.
Oh.
So Starfleet Academy is going to be a little bit more of a spin-off of Discovery. And I think Tilly's going to be a character on that. That's my understanding.
But it would focus more on the people, I think.
I hope so. I think Starfleet Academy is a really like fertile ground because there have been 2 different Starfleet Academy comic book series and at least 1 book series, and I think it's a great venue for storytelling about the future. And I think as we know from X-Men, when you tell stories through the lens of a young person, especially someone who's like college age, high school age, like the emotions of it can be a lot more intense. So I expect a lot of good things from that. We know that Discovery is ending, sadly. We know that Prodigy is ending for now. Everybody please hashtag save Prodigy because the kids deserve their Star Trek. They deserve more than a single season. It's crazy to me that they were already in production on season 2 and you would end it now. That seems nuts to me personally. The timeline. Last I heard was all the Quentin Tarantino stuff, and those rumors keep popping up every once in a while, and I doubt it'll happen at this point.
There's always a rumor that he's going to direct anything in any franchise, so I don't put too much stock.
I don't want him to, personally.
I don't want him to either.
I love him. Like, let him do his one-shots. I'm okay with it.
I agree. The big idea for the last Star Trek, the Star Trek 4, was supposed to be they were going to bring Chris Hemsworth back as Kirk's father and do a crossover, because obviously Chris Hemsworth is a big star, but then they couldn't afford him, and good.
Now it's also different because of his they found that he has a potential to get a genetic disease.
Right, he might have a degenerative disease, right? Or he has the potential. So he might not want to do those kind of movies anymore anyway. I would love to see that cast together again. I really liked Beyond, and I think the failure of Beyond means that they probably wouldn't do a story like Beyond again. I think Beyond is the best of those films because it feels the most Star Trek-ish to me, meaning like it's about a team working together for a common goal, and it's the most ensemble-y of those movies. So I would love to see another one with that cast, but I'm not going to hold my breath. But I think we can be grateful that the JJ movies are what rebooted Star Trek. The reason we have the Star Trek we have, the reason we have Alex Kurtzman in charge and all the stuff that we have is because of the success of those movies.
That is true.
I think we can be grateful.
And that's why I'm thankful for every single piece of Star Trek media out there, because it's going to give somebody something or it's going to lead to something else. So
that's right.
Yeah. I needed that bombastic, epic approach to Star Trek for me to really like dip my toes in.
Yeah.
Like that beginning scene with Chris Hemsworth in like on the Kelvin in the first Star Trek.
That's one of the greatest scenes I've ever seen. I mean, in the first 5 minutes to make you cry, like just incredible.
Right.
Mhm.
And that was when I was like, okay, all right, that's how, like, make me cry, prove you can make me cry, that you know emotions, you know, like you can handle doing that. I think it's interesting, and I think Gil would probably have some opinions about what I'm saying, the Star Trek Renaissance seems to be coinciding a lot with the Superman Renaissance. And both franchises are leaning back into hopeful adventure.
I agree.
About legacy, about hope, about inspiration.
We need it.
Yeah.
Have you guys checked out My Pal Superman or whatever
My
that?
Adventures of Superman. I just watched the first 2 episodes. I haven't started recommending it. I'm about to get on the train of recommending it. It's on on Max. It's on Max right now. It's so cute. It's action-packed and has heart.
Yeah. I agree. I thought Superman and Lois was fantastic. I'm really heartbroken that this truncated third season is only going to have like a few of the cast members back. Only 4 cast members, right?
No. It's the 4th season. No, you're right. It is the 3rd season. Yeah, you're right.
Whatever last season it's going to be.
The next season is the final season. Yeah.
They're giving it one last truncated 10-episode season, but they are firing about 7 people. It is going to be a much smaller cast, much smaller budget, and I don't know what that means because the show is very much about the family. Yeah. And it's not like it was a giant cast to begin with. Like everyone has a purpose. Everyone does something. Mm-hmm. I will say, because you guys are both Doctor Who people, I've always talked about Superman in terms of that he's very much like Doctor Who and that a great Superman story fully relies on the supporting cast. A great Doctor Who story is a great companion story, right?
Yeah.
A great Superman story is a great Lois Lane story, or a great Perry White story, or a great Jimmy Olsen story. And I think that Superman and Lois really understood that, because a great Superman story is going to be a great Jonathan Kent story, or a great, Lana Lang story, or whatever. And the exact same thing with My Adventures with Superman. Clearly, the main characters are Lois and Jimmy, and Superman is their pal who's going to save them, right? Because the question is like, we know Superman is invulnerable. Superman's not going to get hurt. We are scared that Lois is going to get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
As long as we love Lois, that's what we care about, And
she is too damn cute. Like,
she's great. And this last season of Superman and Lois, that they did this whole cancer storyline. I mean, they did it so much better than the Thor movie did, right?
Yeah.
And it was just, it's a little like the CW version of that. Like, they ring the bell on the top of the roof and they go, screw cancer, because they can't say fuck on the CW.
Yeah.
It's very twee, but like, everything was resonant. Everything really worked. And those cancer episodes I thought were really stellar for a CW show. Yeah. I was very happy with all of it.
Yeah. I think it's interesting that our franchises are moving in that direction. I don't know whether it has to do with the zeitgeist of just life in general, like in real world.
Something more hopeful.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, how did you feel? I mean, do you assume that the Superman Legacy movie is going to be an adaptation of Truth, Justice, and the American, or What's So Funny About Truth, Justice, and the American Way?
You mean with the Authority instead of the Elite?
Yeah.
It's possible.
That's my assumption.
I have faith. I have faith in James Gunn.
Yeah, me too.
And the casting, I thought it was safe, but strong. Safe but strong casting choices with Superman and Lois.
I think that's exactly right.
Yeah, but the Superman comics, all the different super related comics are amazing. They're just all really good now.
Philip Kennedy Johnson is one of my very favorite writers now. His Warworld saga, I am getting that omnibus. That is that omnibus looks amazing. I'm getting the whole thing. Oh, I can't wait to reread it. And
it's going to be considered in however long one of the best Superman stories of all time. Like,
I hope so. I think it deserves it. And who's writing the Jamal Igle series, the one with the beautiful art? What's the name of the guy?
Which one? What series? I don't know.
Superman.
Oh, I don't know actually. Yeah, I don't know.
I want to say Jeremy Adams, but I know it's not Jeremy Adams.
Funny,
it's,
Michael Dorn.
Josh Josh Williamson.
Yeah.
Joshua Williams.
Joshua Williamson. Yeah.
Williamson.
Joshua Williamson. Yeah.
Okay.
Michael
But
Dorn
he's
is
writing.
writing the Steel comic.
Michael Dorn is writing Steel, by the way.
Michael, no.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My Michael Dorn.
Your Michael Dorn.
Yeah, you're Michael Dorn. He's writing Steel, which is a character he voiced on the cartoon. You know.
I didn't know
And
that. Okay. Yeah.
I've never known that he actually wrote. I've never seen anything he's written.
Yeah.
And I know comics take a long time to produce, but the press tour for Picard season 3 was the first time I've ever really seen him speak about himself and his history and the racism he experienced in the 80s and working on chips and all of that stuff. And I didn't know how smart he was. I was like, okay, he's an actor. I'm sure he's great. But I didn't know that he was that smart a guy. And I'm really excited to see where he's going with Steel because the first couple issues have already been great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also,
2 issues are out if you want to.
2 issues. They're really. Lauren, go read Steel. It's super good.
Steel works. Just so
Steel
you know.
works.
Yeah.
There's also of course you guys would know about it, but Gargoyles has so many of the TNG characters voicing
Yeah.
or TNG actors voicing characters in that.
Yeah. Well, because Jonathan Frakes voices Xanatos, right? The main villain in Gargoyles.
I think so.
And Marina Sirtis is the other main villain, Demona.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I didn't know that. And then they bring in all these.
And then Patrick Stewart does a bit. Brent Spiner is in it.
Yeah.
Everyone does
Brent
something.
Spiner is he Puck?
I think he's Puck.
Yeah, he is.
That's crazy. Yeah, it's funny how different random things get related in that way.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, and in the real world for Star Trek next month in August is Star Trek Las Vegas, which I'm not attending, unfortunately. But yeah, it's a huge convention for Trekkies and Trekkers, as some people prefer to be called. And
I missed the Star Trek experience in Vegas.
I never got to go. No. I'm actually going to Vegas coming up soon, but just not when Star Trek Las Vegas is happening. So
I'll tell you a quick story before we all wrap up, depending on Dimitri's schedule. But I went to see the Vegas experience with my girlfriend at the time. We were just in Vegas, and I was like, well, we got to go visit this thing. And I went to Quark's Bar, and we had a Warp Core breach and all that. And they had characters walking around as different Star Trek aliens. So there's a Klingon, and she was not a big nerd, but she got a kick out of seeing me get excited about nerd stuff. So she's like, oh, we got to take a picture with the Klingon. You got to take a picture with the Ferengi. And we're sitting there and we're eating, having our stuff. And she sees me visibly tighten up. She's like, are you all right? Do you want to take a picture with that one? I'm like, I don't want to take a picture with that guy. And she looks at him. She's like, are you afraid of the Gorb? And I'm like, first of all, it's the Borg. And you weren't there. You weren't at 359. You weren't at Wolf 359. You didn't see what happened. You would be afraid of the Gorb too.
The Gorb.
Yeah.
It's funny because longtime friend of the Keeg, Steve Biggs, who Gil has done a Star Trek episode with. Steve used to be my professor in college, and then we just became friends after. He's a theater geek. He was a Klingon in Star Trek Experience. That was one of his jobs.
That's fun.
And
I might have a picture with him.
You might. I mean, his Klingon name was Kraalk Tanek. And it's Clark Kent backwards.
Clever.
Because he's a big Superman fan also. By the way, is there a big tie-in between Superman fans and Star Trek fans? Is there a...
I can see why there would be, because it's about optimism and it's about hope and it's about sort of an innate goodness of humanity. So I could see a crossover. I don't necessarily know if there's a specifically big crossover.
I think in general, DC, Marvel, Star Trek, Star Wars have a lot of threads that connect with the people who like them.
Yeah.
I think if you're a Marvel, you're a Star Wars, and if you're a DC, you might be a Star Trek.
I don't buy that, because I grew up. I grew up DC and Star Wars, and and then I did my Marvel, and then I learned Star Trek. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just the exception. I don't know. But what's really cool about Star Trek and this podcast and being able to talk about it is that we're able to share the love of no matter what we're into in Star Trek. the different things that we're able to kind of come to a common ground of like Star Trek is worth experiencing in whatever medium, right?
Yep.
I think it's nice that we can all share that. I want to thank you guys so much for coming on the show and taking time out of your day to be talking about Star Trek. Do you guys have any closing thoughts that you want to say out to the public? Because maybe I'll clip this out to the public about just pitch Star Trek. Anything.
Oh.
Is Lauren scared or?
Yeah, I think you short-circuited her.
No, I just have so much to say.
Go for it.
You get
No,
you
you
get
go
30
first.
seconds. 30 second
No.
a 30-second pitch.
I'll go first.
You go first.
Star Trek is the best thing. I don't know what else to tell you. If you're not convinced by now, you know, Star Trek is about that we can make it. That all of this service, all of this pain that we're going through, all of the hardship of our everyday lives will amount to something because we will, as a group, figure out how to take care of each other. That's it. We owe things to each other. We are beholden to each other, and that I think is what Star Trek is all about. It's about that if we stick together, if we see past each other's differences and learn to celebrate each other, that we can cooperate and become the humanity that we are meant to be, and that we will be able to transcend to the stars and even beyond that. That's what I think Star Trek is. It's hopeful. The stories are wonderful. The characters are wonderful. You know, come for the great science fiction, come for the characters, but stay for the themes, because the themes are what bring you through. That's what I love personally about Star Trek.
I loved that. There's so much about humanity in Star Trek and so much that we can learn from that. And when you're able to look at it through the lens of Star Trek, you're able to apply it to your life and the people that you know and love and your experiences. And it does at times ask difficult questions that we may not have the answers to, but we learn about ourselves by thinking about those things and questioning what is going on in our world. And it offers such a unique perspective when it comes to the media that we're watching, because it is all about how we can all work together to make a better now and a better future for ourselves, as long as we work together and rely on our innate humanity and let that shine in everything that we do and in every encounter that we make. And Star Trek is just such a beautiful and wonderful experience. You laugh, you cry. I cry more than others, but it's so special and so pure. And I think everyone should give it a chance.
Was it Rumpelstiltskin? Did Rumpelstiltskin make you cry?
No.
Okay.
But I have cried a lot in watching Star Trek.
Buck Bokai made me cry. He talked about baseball in a romantic way, and I was like, yeah, baseball is nice, even though I don't give a shit about baseball. He made me care about baseball.
Sometimes it's not about sharing the love with somebody. It's it's taking part in the love of something. Like Gil mentioned when he was at, Las Vegas. Like, so just being with someone who is in love with this, having the passion of it, that's awesome. Sharing in that's great. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day. You both obviously love Star Trek. I'm very happy that I got both of you on this episode. Before we get going, where can we find you? What do you got coming up? Anything you want to plug? Gil, I'll let you go first.
Sure. You can find me on all the things at GJ Baron. My two shows that I'm doing right now, we have a monthly show at the Comedy Store. It's called Family Dinner with Jodie Sweetin from Full House. So come get your Full House stuff signed if that's what you want to do. She's really lovely, and it's a really good time hanging out with one of your favorite TV stars. The other show we do is called Pop Cultured with Jimmy Pardo. That's at the Lyric Hyperion, and the next one is going to be on the 28th. The tickets are already available. If you go to lyrichuiperion.com, you will see that show. That is a fun game show hosted by the great Jimmy Pardo from the Never Not Funny podcast. And we actually have a comic book that I'm not allowed to talk about, that they are so big. We have a comic that is so huge, I am literally not allowed to tell you who they are. So this next one is a really special one to come see.
Comedian comic.
The comedian is what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A very famous comedian who might have come out with a really interesting special recently, who I am not allowed to say their name publicly. But you should absolutely come see that
and
show.
It's going to be a live show?
It's going to be a live in-person show. It will also be streaming, I believe, on Nowhere Comedy Club. You can get those tickets at nowherecomedyclub.com.
Awesome. Gil, you're always up to something. You work very hard. Again, I'm happy that you were able to make this one. Thank you. And Lauren, where can we find you? What do you got coming up? Anything you want to plug?
So you can find me on TikTok and Instagram at The Rose Explodes, but it's _Rose_explodes. Find me there. I'm also on Twitch as The Rose Explodes, all one word. And I do a D&D TTRPG, sometimes homebrew, sometimes Star Wars, sometimes Star Trek, sometimes horror games on Long Lost Lore on Twitch. You can see me get up to some nonsense on there. Also, I will be going to LA Comic-Con this year, which I think is in December. So, you know, obviously I'll be in a Star Trek cosplay there.
Will you be dressed up as a Gorb?
A Gorb? No, but fun fact, my dog's name is Geordie, after Geordie LaForge, but one of his nicknames is Gorby and the Gorbs. So my dog is Gorb.
That's fair.
But
you weren't there. You weren't at Wolf 359.
No, I literally was.
Yeah, you were there.
I wasn't.
I was having a flashback to me telling my ex-girlfriend. Like, you weren't there.
The Gorbs.
The Borg, they're everywhere. Don't make us go back. The Borg are everywhere.
I probably will be doing my Jadzia from Trials and Tribulations, but I keep the spots. In the show, she like gets rid of the spots with the dermaplaner or something, but I have the spots because I think they're cute. So that's what I'm up to.
You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. Also, just because I didn't get to say it, it was nice seeing Geordie LaForge's daughters in Picard season 3, and then also made me want to be Geordie LaForge's son-in-law.
Oh,
yeah.
One way or another, I'm going to marry into that family.
I cried about that. I was so happy about
it. Nice. It was nice to see them all together.
I loved in interviews, like the three of them clearly actually bonded, and they sort of adopted the actress that's not actually Mika Burton. I forgot her name, but they've sort of adopted her into the family, which I think is very sweet. And, you know, the more I learn about these Star Trek actors through all these various podcasts they all have and different interview shows, the more I like them and like that they like each other. You know, they're just a bunch of actors. They're just a bunch of theater nerds, but as Star Trek as a franchise goes on, they are collecting more actors into their company, and they clearly all like each other.
They're family.
They are a family. I love the one that Connor Trenier is doing, the whatever that one is called, the Shuttle Pod show. I love the Gates McFadden, the Investigates. That's really good. The Seventh Rule, the Sirach Lofton show is really fun. So I know that the Voyager guys also have their own show. So there's so many good Star Trek podcasts going. And then there's the official one with Tawny Newsome and Paul F. Tompkins. So we're in a Star Trek podcasting renaissance as well.
Yeah. Definitely, if you're a fan of Star Trek, check out those podcasts. But if you're a fan of podcasts in general, the Keeg. If you want to,
what about the Keeg?
Yeah, you know, if you're watching us live, you're watching us on twitch.tv/The Keeg Show or youtube.com/The Keeg Show, wherever you're listening to us or watching us. Like, comment, subscribe, click follow, write a review, do your thing. You can find our podcast wherever you get your podcasts from: Apple Podcasts, Google Play, SoundCloud, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Stitcher. At least for the next month that Stitcher exists, because I think Stitcher is going under. Regardless, we were late on that train, and we'll ride it till the end, and it's fine. If you're on social media, you can follow the Keeg on social media. Instagram and TikTok are our two biggest ones at The Keeg Show, but we're also on Facebook and, Twitter for the time being, at The Keeg Show / The Keeg Show. You can also find us on Threads at The Keeg Show, or however you find things on Threads. I've yet to figure it out, but I'm posting. We're doing our thing. Hop on Threads, get rid of Twitter. One billionaire for another, but at least this one manages it better. Other than that, if you want to give back to the show, patreon.com/The Keeg Show. Find a donation tier that works for you to subscribe to give back to the Keeg if you'd like to. Find a comic shop near you, because we're talking about Star Trek comics. Comicshoplocator.com. You just type in your zip code and you can find the comic shops near you. Other than that, this is the Keeg Talks. Today it was about Star Trek. Next week it'll be about Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1, because that comes out next week. So we're going to be talking about that and the franchise there. We also do Comic Talk every Thursday at 5 p.m. Pacific. And we are doing the Secret Invasion After Show Wednesday nights at 10 p.m. Pacific. So we got a lot going on with the Keeg, but find us on TikTok and Instagram and keep track of all our schedules that way. Thank you, Gil. Thank you, Lauren, so much for being on this show. Once again, I'm your host, Dimithri Perera, and this has been the Keeg Talks Star Trek. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Super strong or super fast. Gotta beat the boss and get the loot, 'cause it's the Keeg.